So without further ado, this is Ask a Solar Expert. My name's Erin Taylor. I go by ET, but my parents named me Erin, so you can call me Erin or ET. And I'm also here with Matt Schuler from EnergySage. Matt, I'm sorry, am I saying your last name right?
That's absolutely correct. Yep, you got it right.
I meant to ask beforehand, double check. So here we are, and let's get going so I can tell you what's up. So just by way of furthering the point, Green Energy Consumers is a nonprofit, but we have a partnership with EnergySage to refer people for solar shopping. So we're both here tonight, and Matt's going to do the bulk of the presenting. So I just wanted to give a nod to EnergySage. You're going to learn a lot about them tonight if you haven't heard of them already. So just briefly, before we get going, I wanted to let you know who we are. Maybe you have met us before, or maybe you just kind of heard about this on Facebook, and here you are. So we're a nonprofit organization based in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and our mission is to harness our power as consumers to speed the transition to a low carbon future. But when I'm out there talking to people who want to make changes in their lives to help us get to that low carbon future, or maybe to help save you money or whatever your priorities are, I really like to tell people that what we're about is enabling people and communities to make green energy choices. We have a lot of programs that really, we either refer people to vendors or companies like EnergySage that make it easy, or we try to make it easy for consumers to make green energy choices in their home and their lives. So we're a nonprofit. We were founded in 1982. So we just turned 41 this year, yay us. Our work has always been not just pro-environment, but pro-consumer. We think the two things are the same. When you do good things for the environment, ultimately you tend to make consumers healthier, happier, save them money. So our programs are really all based in doing research and offering practical ways for consumers to connect with vendors and install that green technology that they've been thinking about. Or if you need to replace your car, if you need to replace your heating system, we want to help you maybe make the choice of electric or heat pumps. So we do a lot of education around that stuff. And the tip of one of the, like what I've just talked about is really like the top of the iceberg. Underneath all of it is a lot of policy advocacy. We have 2 advocates on staff, full-time advocates who work in Massachusetts and Rhode Island to help pass policies that make it easier for people to access green technology and help us reduce emissions toward a low carbon future. So we do a lot of advocacy because people participate in our programs, and because we have data on what people are looking for, we can influence the market through consumer choices, but also through policy advocacy. And that's really important to us. So today's agenda, just want to give you a higher overview. Matt's going to give you kind of a more granular agenda when he gets going. But I just want to touch briefly on other green electricity options that are out there, because a lot of people come to these webinars and they're thinking solar, I want to do it, but maybe not right now, or maybe it's just not really accessible for me for some reason. Well, you have other options. So we'll talk about those briefly. And then I want to tell you why Green Energy Consumers, a nonprofit organization, has taken to recommending EnergySage for your solar shopping journey. Then we're going to do a quick poll just to kind of hear where y'all are at. And our solar presentation will then be given by Matt, who's an EnergySage solar advisor, and he will explain what that means. But the basics are he's an impartial solar expert whose whole job is to help you make choices about solar. He has no incentive to steer you toward any particular installer. So it's just a wonderful service that EnergySage offers, and Matt's here tonight offering his expertise. So we're really grateful. And then what we're hoping for is up to half an hour for just to answer your questions. So again, on your Zoom bar at the bottom, there's a Q&A section. That's where I would love for you to type your questions. And also go look at other people's questions and hit the thumbs up if you really want to see an answer to one of those questions. Because if we have, when you upvote a question, it comes to kind of the top of our queue. So we know that a lot of you are interested in that answer, and we get to those questions first. We'll do our best to get through all the questions, but we might not. But know that what we're trying to do tonight is open a door here so that you can talk with Matt or another solar advisor at EnergySage, or you can reach out to me if you need some help taking the next steps in your solar journey. Real quickly, I want to touch on your other green electricity options that are out there. We do have a program called Green Powered. If you're a National Grid customer, it's also referred to as Green Up. And it really just allows you to choose 25% or 100% renewable energy that comes kind of billed right through your electricity bill. It does cost a little bit more, but you're supporting local green electricity and you're helping to build new renewable sources in New England because we only source from new New England resources. So this program over the years has really had a hand in supporting 30 small scale wind turbines, hundreds and hundreds of small solar systems, many hydro projects, and even some anaerobic digesters. So it absolutely makes a difference. And for typically $20 a month, you can have 100% green electricity by just signing up on our website. At least 21 communities in Massachusetts and 7 in Rhode Island offer green electricity for community choice electricity program. So your community might actually have a green electricity option that is supplied by our nonprofit, Green Energy Consumers Alliance. So you can really check that on your town's website. Just search, I live in Arlington, Massachusetts, Arlington Community Choice Electricity. It will come up in Google, but also this website here, we have a list of communities that we work with. But if you don't see your community, don't stop there. There's certainly other communities doing this. Go ahead and Google it. The neat thing about community choice electricity is for a whole community, it's adding more renewable energy into the supply. So where I live in Arlington, we have 11% more renewable energy in our base electricity than required by law. We're also paying a really good price for that. So at many times we're paying less than what our utility Eversource is offering for browner power. So it's this really wonderful opportunity for communities to drive development of renewable energy, put more renewable energy in residents' electricity, and offer the choice of opting up to 50 or 100% by just signing up on your community's website. So that's a really great option. The other thing I want to give you a warning on is you will also get mailings. They might knock on your door, phone calls from competitive electricity suppliers telling you that they can get you a really good deal if you sign a contract with them. That's been proven by our organization and also the Massachusetts Attorney General to not work out on an individual basis. That very same supplier that can do a really good job getting a good price for a whole community bulk purchasing for residents, it doesn't do as good of a job on the individual level. So we just wanted to make you aware that competitive electricity suppliers, one, they're not always local green energy, and they're not really usually helping to add more green to the power grid. And typically they're a ripoff. So just pay attention. If your community has a community choice electricity program, that's good. If you want to join Green Powered, that's good. These are proven, vetted, endorsed programs. But if someone comes to your door saying, oh, sign up for this green thing, it's cheaper and, it's what, you got to sign here. Just don't do it. Beware. And lastly, both Massachusetts and Rhode Island have laws that usher in a greener grid for everyone, the Renewable Portfolio Standard or Renewable Energy Standard, and many other things, such as procuring offshore wind. These things are law. So, and our advocates have been involved in a lot of the education of elected officials and the movement toward a greener grid. So, one thing you can also do is support us. We are trying to raise actually $4,000 more by the end of the week to sort of support our mission and that advocacy work we do, along with those programs I just told you about. So if you love this presentation, or if you love us and you're so inclined, even $10 makes a difference. So now I want to get into the solar part of this webinar. I want to tell you why we, as an organization that has been involved with helping people move towards solar since the late 1990s, people have always come to us asking about solar, and we've always tried to help them in various ways through various partners. But what we discovered in 2017 is that EnergySage was doing it well. Transparency, consumer protection, easy to use, privacy, it was all there. So we started recommending that our members talk to EnergySage. So you can get side-by-side quotes by signing up for the EnergySage portal, and we're going to tell you how to do that, and look at them apples to apples. You can talk to someone like Matt if you need help making a decision or understanding them. It's easy and free to register, and the installers will not get your personal contact information unless you choose. So they can't reach out to you unless you want them to. So that's also this wonderful thing, is no sales pressure. So with that, I'm going to start moving us toward Matt's part of the presentation. But before we do, I want to take a poll. So I'm going to put a poll up on the screen. It's going to be 2 questions. And it's, where are you in your solar journey? So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. So if you want to answer the first question, where are you in your solar journey? Starting out, have you registered for EnergySage by any chance? Are you comparing quotes and installers? What's the most appropriate stage for you? You might be in 2 of these places, but pick one. And then on number 2, what's been your biggest hurdle? Cost, the roof, finding an installer, understanding the rebate, doing the paperwork. No hurdles yet? Perhaps I should have put an other category, but try to fit yourself in here. All right, I see a lot of answers now, so I'm going to end the poll in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So here are our results. A lot of you are starting out. Few of you have already registered for EnergySage and are comparing quotes or are in the installation process. And for your concerns, we have a pretty even tie about costs, the roof, and the rebates. So lucky for all of you, we are going to go over that stuff. So without further ado, introducing Matt.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much, ET, for the introduction and the great starting point there. And EnergySage, we've been working with GECA, with the Green Energy Consumers Alliance, for years now. They're a fantastic partner of ours. We love the mission that they have, and we think that it aligns really well with who we are as well, which is part of what I'll be talking about today. So before we go into specifics, quick introduction about myself. I'm a senior energy advisor over here at EnergySage. I've been here a little north of 3 years now, having previously worked in the public sector in the clean energy market for New England as well. I worked for the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. And so I've kind of seen both sides of the coin there. And I think that solar specifically, but clean energy as a whole, is obviously a huge piece of our energy transition for making sort of a cleaner, more sustainable future. And companies like Geka, I think are really important for kind of being able to spread a positive message there and ideally reflect the problem that we're trying to solve in the community. But moving forward into kind of a bit of a background on EnergySage, ET, you can go to the next slide here. So quick agenda for what we're going to be discussing today. So again, given a bit of a background on myself, what we're then going to go through is a background on how solar actually works. What are the benefits of solar? How does everything fit in together? How does the interconnection work with your utility company? Ideally trying to give a very simple but basic background of sort of what to expect when you're approaching a solar searching process, what's actually going on your roof, on your property, and how that full installation process works. From there, we'll do a bit of a background on community solar, one of the other offerings that we offer through our platform, and then finally go into the EnergySage overview. So how does the process work actually doing all of this through EnergySage? What does our platform look like? What is the problem that we are trying to solve, and how can we really assist you every step of the way? So hopefully it'll be helpful for people. I know we've already gotten a number of great questions on the Q&A section so far. We will try to get through as many of those questions as possible. If some of the questions are maybe a little bit more specific or not quite directly topic oriented, we might recommend you take them offline. ET, I think we will be following up after the webinar as well with some contact info, right? So part of what I do, part of what our team does at EnergySage is ideally serve to give you a direct one-on-one option for really being able to review your questions and resources. And so happy to, if we're not able to get through every question today, or if there's something that makes more sense to cover directly, we're happy to give you the resource for that after the fact today. But again, feel free to keep the questions coming in. If it makes sense to cover in the middle of the presentation, we will. Otherwise, we'll have some time at the end as well.
And also, I just want to go ahead and address one question. Yes, EnergySage, you work nationally, right, Matt? So yes,
we're national, yeah.
In Rhode Island as well. This presentation applies to Rhode Islanders, Bay Staters, and everyone else.
Yeah. So we're national. Although fun fact, we're based out of Boston. So I'm actually calling in from Somerville here, so not too far from ET over in Arlington. So New England's our home base. That's why we, again, another reason we love partnering with Geka. But yeah, we are national. I want to say we cover 38 states plus DC now. So good amount of ground that we cover at this point. And so again, yeah, my role here at EnergySage, I'm a senior energy advisor, and our team is really here as kind of the first resource for consumers using our platform. But so what is our platform? We are an online marketplace and content resource for customers looking to go solar, as well as explore other clean tech and clean energy options for your home. Our mission being to empower people to make smarter energy decisions through simplicity, transparency, and choice, which is where the marketplace comes in for what we offer. So we have thousands of content resources for customers looking to shop to help you educate yourself from the very basics all the way down to finer details such as local incentives and rebates, individual product reviews and offerings. But with a marketplace structure that we offer, which is, I'd say, starting with residential solar, but also extends to community solar and more recently heat pumps. We look to give customers who are looking to make the shift the options that they need to really be able to get a quality comparison, understand that you're getting both a fair price and also a connection with a reputable contractor or a series of reputable contractors, so that you can properly clarify your options, get competitive quotes, and have a way to really dig into the information that you need to make the decision without needing to go directly to those contractors to kind of get the information directly from the source. So again, we believe that choice there is very important. It's one of the key things that our founder and CEO, Vikram Agarwal, always loves to emphasize when approaching the decision, is that it's necessary to really understand that you have options out there. And our goal is to make sure and make it as easy as possible for you to really dig into all those options on an even playing field. And that's where my role as an energy advisor comes in, is to really be the unbiased resource for helping you sort through that info. So as ET said, our goal is to not steer you in any one particular direction. It's just to help you make that decision easier, help you clarify the information through again, kind of an unbiased sounding board for helping review all that info. So as a baseline, really what goes into a solar installation? And we try to, again, break it down to its nuts and bolts here as far as what the core components are that actually make up a system itself. So obviously you have the photovoltaic panels, the panels that are actually sitting and drawing in the energy from the sun. But the energy that's generated off the panels is not actually usable by your home. So energy that comes off a solar panel is in direct current, or DC. Your home uses alternating current. So there needs to be a piece in the system that essentially makes the energy generated by the panels usable by your home. That's where the inverter comes in. There are a couple different ways to do a system inversion. Happy to cover that a little more detail after the presentation. I think there was a question about that. But the inverter essentially takes the direct current generated by the panels, produces it into usable alternating current for your home. Then you have the racking and mounting systems that mount the equipment either to your roof, potentially to the ground on your property, or even in some fairly rare cases to sort of these sort of larger tracking poles. But that's essentially everything, the equipment that actually secures everything in place. You have the performance monitoring systems that allow you to actually track the performance and output of your system itself. And then finally, the optional solar battery. Now, batteries, I'd say, are, if you want to consider solar sort of relatively established equipment at this point, batteries are definitely the newer side of the coin there. We are starting to see them be included a lot more often in quotes that we provide through our platform. About 1 in every 5 customers actually goes through with the solar installation plus storage at this point, but that number is going up every year, and we imagine it'll continue to as that equipment gets more popular and potentially a little bit more cost effective as well. But so again, the systems are maybe a little bit simpler than meets the eye. There aren't too many moving pieces, but overall, that's what you can expect as a baseline when installing solar on your home. Here's a little graphic of what it might actually look like once it's up and running. You have the panels. Everything is passed through the inverter and where it's redirected into the main electric panel in the home. And then it is either sent out to power the appliances and the electricity usage within the home, or exported back to your utility company through your electric meter. So most homes have a bidirectional meter at this point. If not, you'll have a bidirectional meter installed with the process of going solar. For some people looking into solar the first time, this might be a bit of a surprise. Solar does not technically make you grid independent. And in a lot of cases, you don't actually want to necessarily be fully independent from your utility grid. This is what we would call a grid tied system, meaning that you're essentially giving yourself a new primary source of power when you go solar. You're not completely cutting the cord, so to speak, from the utility company. During the day, you'll power your home with solar. You'll very likely even produce more energy than you need during those daytime sunlight hours. But as I'd imagine is applicable for most people, you don't use all your energy during the day. You probably use a lot of power at night. Maybe you're running the air conditioning. Maybe when you get home from work, you run a lot of appliances, but the sun's not necessarily out to cover everything there. So the way that all works is through a process called net metering. And ET, you can go to the next slide here for a nifty little graphic kind of displaying how this works. So in almost every state where solar has a viable market, net metering is relevant, which is essentially an agreement you'll have with your utility company, wherein when you overgenerate power during the day, you send that excess power back to your utility company, and in exchange, they essentially credit your account for the energy that you're sending back to them. So they take the energy that you generated off the panels, they disperse it around your community, so it's still getting used somewhere, even if you're not using it, and then you're essentially prepaying the electricity you'll draw from the grid when you're not producing enough. So if I have a system installed on my home and I overgenerate by 5 kilowatt hours during the day, then I draw those 5 kilowatt hours back at night. Financially, I've already covered it, or at least have covered a good portion of it. So financially, this is how solar makes sense, even if you're still connected to the grid, and how you're able to cover your usage, even if most of your electricity usage comes during the nighttime or during periods when you're not actively able to generate.
And this is why some of your friends with solar say they don't have an electric bill, or they only pay their electric bill like a couple times a year. It's because of net metering. It's because they kind of generate more in the summer than they use and then work off those credits in the winter.
Exactly. Yeah. And to kind of quickly circle back to the battery discussion. So who does a battery actually make sense for? Because I do want to touch on that really quick. Again, people from a financial perspective, the battery is not essential. I would actually say for the vast majority of people who are just looking at solar, beyond obviously the environmental benefits, looking for the most cost-effective way to go solar, a battery is probably not a great fit. There's really no requirement for it. For people who are looking more for the energy independence, who are really looking to separate from the grid and potentially have some emergency backup in the event of a power outage, that's when a battery might be a good addition to consider. But again, it's not required for everyone. And thanks to net metering, financially, it's not required for your system to pay for itself. So again, where does the benefit of solar really come from? Obviously, as a starting point, reducing your carbon footprint, reducing your environmental impacts, essentially helping support both yourself and your community with clean renewable energy to reduce the grid's reliance on fossil fuels is a huge starting point. Beyond that, again, it's nice that solar can also be a financial benefit. So reducing or completely eliminating your electric bill, supporting the local clean energy economy in your area, avoiding rising energy costs is a big one. We all live in New England. I think everyone noticed their electric bill has gotten a little bit higher over the past probably 18 to 24 months. In Massachusetts, at least, it's been pretty substantial. That I'd say is inherently the difficulty of staying with the utility, is that utility costs are not consistent. Going solar, if nothing else, it allows you to prepay your energy costs for the lifetime of the system. You know what you're paying for it because you've already paid the solar bill, and you're essentially able to hedge yourself against those rising electric costs. Finally, it does increase the property value as well. So properties with solar upon resale are able to get back about 4% in additional revenue on average nationwide. So if you're planning on moving, but you haven't quite been able to fully pay off the system and avoided cost, you can still get some of that value back upon home sale as well, which is a nice plus.
Matt, we did have a question just come in about net metering. So I thought maybe we could jump on it. Is net metering banked power at the retail rate in Massachusetts?
Yeah, this is a great question. So in most of Massachusetts, it is. So the larger private utility territories, National Grid and Eversource, net meter at a retail rate. In Massachusetts, some of the smaller municipal utility regions do not meter at a retail rate. So if you're in a smaller municipal utility region, maybe your electricity usage is covered by your town rather than one of the larger utility providers, it's probably worth looking into. But for most of Massachusetts, it is a 1-to-1 rate, meaning that for every kilowatt hour you're sending back, you're covering a kilowatt hour drawn from the grid.
Do you know about Rhode Island?
Rhode Island, again, similar, given that a lot of the utility regions are from the same providers, National Grid and largely Eversource. I don't know quite as much about smaller municipal regions in Rhode Island. If you are on one of the smaller utility companies, though, the vast majority of utilities will actually have a page for this directly on their site. So if you Google your utility provider and net metering, chances are the first page is going to be a resource about going solar in the area. But a lot of Rhode Island is also 1-to-1. Yep.
There's one more question here. I'd like to know more about selling credits on the secondary market. And I think that's referring to net metering credits, although I'm not sure if you're referring to RECs.
So that sounds like it's referring to RECs rather than net metering. It's very understandable to get them mixed up. So net metering credits cannot be sold and transferred between meters on the secondary market for a cash value. In some cases, you can, and Massachusetts is one of the areas where this is in some cases allowed. You can use what we call virtual net metering, where you can share credits between meters, but there's no secondary market for net metering credits on an independent level. If you have a system that is still generating RECs can be sold on the secondary market. Largely, they're mostly sold to utilities for places that are still generating them, as they're required by law for utilities to purchase them. But those are a bit less common at this point, certainly less common in Massachusetts.
Yeah, usually through Massachusetts in particular, the SMART program, your RECs are going to be commandeered and sold as part of that benefit to you.
Exactly, yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about virtual net metering when we get to the community solar section. There are cases where you can purchase net metering credits as part of the community solar option as an alternative, but less relevant for people going with the rooftop option.
Okay.
I've seen a couple questions here about owning versus leasing. This is a great question. I will, just to say that we'll cover that at the end of the presentation, because I think that's worth a bit of a more extended discussion. But definitely notice those coming in here.
Great.
Great. So a couple just general frequently asked questions in terms of what you should largely be thinking about when approaching solar, and says things that I'd say are worth kind of considering independently. Is my roof suitable for solar? So understand your property, understand what you'd be looking for as an installation option. Ideally, you want a roof that is east, west, or south facing, south being ideal. Good amount of open space for panels, easily accessible so that there's a simple installation that can be done. Lack of tree coverage is important. Obviously, some shading is not the end of the world, but you want to make sure you have a good open roof with good exposure to sunlight. One more thing about the roof as well, it is very common for people to need a roof replacement with the process of going solar. If your roof is in maybe the 15 to 20-year-old range, likely it's going to need replacement within the lifetime of the system. Very common for people to need to bundle those together. A lot of solar installers also do roofs. So again, not the end of the world if that's necessary, but understand that that might be part of the process for you when you are looking to do it. Properly sizing your system. first starting point there is just understanding what your utility bill looks like. So that's one of the pieces of information we collect when people register with us, is asking that you provide us with an estimate of your average monthly electricity costs. That way we can send that to our installer network so they know roughly how much energy you use in a given year. Now, in some cases, you might want to size for a system larger than what you currently use. That's totally understandable. In that case, I'd say go in with an understanding of how much energy you use now and what changes you think might be coming to you in the future for future electricity usage, such as an electric vehicle or heat pumps. Maybe you're putting a hot tub in, like think through what you think your electricity load is going to look like, and the installer can help you do the rest. It's their job to really help you ideally size that for the future. Federal investment tax credit. We'll talk about this in a second. We have a couple slides about the ITC, which was recently got a makeover with the Inflation Reduction Act last year. But essentially, the main incentive for solar beyond just covering your utility bill is the 30% federal tax credit. So you get to claim a credit worth 30% of the total installation cost on your taxes the year following your install at the federal level. System lifetime. So equipment is typically, at least on the solar side of things, going to be warranted for 25 years. So it's built to last. There's no moving parts. There's no consumables. It's really not common that you should expect to really need to do a whole lot of work on your system for the majority of the lifespan, barring any sort of malfunctions with the equipment. So you can expect, I'd say, again, warranty coverage for 25 years. Potentially, you might need to replace a couple parts in there within that time span, but it's going to last a while. And last one, we get this one a lot. Should I wait for better technology? So while it's true that equipment does tend to get better year to year, we have seen the improvements on the solar side of things slow down the last probably 5 years, certainly within the last 10. We've hit a bit more of a plateau within the last few, to the point where I'd say, if you wait a couple of years, maybe you get panels that are slightly more efficient, slightly higher wattage. But if you're able to cover your needs now, the benefit to you of another couple of years worth of utility costs is going to outweigh the benefit of waiting for marginally better technology. If you want to just get an idea of that, add up what your utility costs look like over a given year. Say if you haven't done that before, it's higher than you might think when you put it into perspective of 1 year of utility bills, 5 years of utility bills. So again, as long as the equipment today is good enough to get you where you need to go, I'd say it's worth considering that versus kind of waiting each year for progressively better equipment.
So Matt, I'm also just looking to address a question in here and kind of hammer down on a point that you made, is that the installer is going to help you size your system. So if, for example, you are thinking about heat pumps, this is like that. Thank you, Daniel, for your question. This is actually my case too. I'm going to need to replace my heating system. So if you're thinking about heat pumps and solar, and you want to go ahead and do solar first, will your installer be able to help you plan for that, plan for a system?
Yeah. So they'll be able to help to a certain degree. At the end of the day, and I'll, as a bit of a look behind the curtain, last year we did launch a heat pump marketplace. It is still relatively in the beta phase of being only active currently in 3 states: Massachusetts, Colorado, and California. So for the Massachusetts people in here, if you are looking at heat pumps, I'd see if we can provide a link for that. Again, we are not widely advertising for it yet, but it's a very similar service. We're trying to help connect people with contractors, vetted contractors in your area, to help you get bids for the heat pump side of that project. The difficulty with heat pumps as opposed to solar is that they are trickier to size for without more of a detailed consultation. So a solar installer is likely going to be able to give you a ballpark of what you can expect regarding energy consumption. But if you think you're going to do both of those projects in tandem, even if the solar is going to come first, my recommendation would typically be at least to talk with an HVAC contractor. Give them an idea of what your home looks like. Do you currently have a ducted heating system? What's the square footage? They can give you a realistic assessment of what you can expect for your energy usage to increase by. And then you can bring that to a solar installer and say, I want a size for this. So a lot of solar installers will be able to help you have that conversation, but until you get a more detailed assessment of the HVAC work, it is just going to be an estimate.
Thanks, Matt. Moving on.
Moving on here. I think the next section is for the Inflation Reduction Act. Yep. So again, Inflation Reduction Act, this was a big boost for the residential solar market in the country last year. So key takeaways from it: the solar investment tax credit, which was slated to be sunsetted over the next year or two, was increased to 30%. It was previously 26%, going down to 22%. and extended through 2034 for residential solar systems, as well as applied to standalone battery systems as well. So what this means for you, again, essentially you get a couple extra percentage points on your tax credit, and you have a much larger window to be able to claim it. There are also a number of other newer incentives for programs around heat pumps. The EV tax credit was increased, so there's a whole bunch of new goodies for people looking at every aspect of their clean energy transition. But for the solar purpose, again, number you want to look at is that 30% figure.
And on the Inflation Reduction Act, green energy consumers have spent a lot of time dissecting it. So on our YouTube channel, and I'll send this to you, there are webinars that kind of go into a lot of these programs in detail for these different incentives, but it's a big deal. There's also a Rewiring America, and I will send all of this to y'all afterwards, but Rewiring America has an excellent calculator that sort of breaks down all the different things, because it's very, there's the big deals like solar and electric vehicles, but there's also like electrification, because like if you want to add heat pumps, you might just not have the capacity. And you might need to pay an electrician to add the capacity. So there's all kinds of things to help you with electrification. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Yep. Great. Yep. And again, there's a lot of figures here. I think we'll be able to share the deck. I think we're a bit tight on time, so people can certainly digest this a bit. There's plenty of resources. We have a full article on EnergySage dissecting every aspect of, as Green Energy Consumers Alliance has done as well, dissecting each aspect of the IRA if you're looking to get a better idea of exactly what you can get there. So there's plenty of resources out there for you to take a look at some of the finer details. But moving right along here, and I'll try to make a lot of this bite-sized. I think we have a number of community solar slides here. So if anyone here at the end of the day decides that, hey, rooftop solar is not for me, I'm not going to be in my home long enough, I'm a renter, I myself am a renter here, so I'm actually a community solar customer rather than a rooftop solar customer, but community solar is a great alternative. So I want to note quickly on the starting point, because ET gave a great background on the community choice electricity options at the start here. Community solar is independent from this. So community solar, we talked about those virtual net metering options where you can essentially, in some cases, buy net metering credits. Community solar is an example of this. So if you're ever driving along the highway, you see those fields with thousands of solar panels, chances are that was a community solar farm. Essentially, they are typically privately developed farms that are incentivized or mandated by the state or utility region to provide a certain amount of their power from renewable sources. As in exchange for the, again, benefits they get for building out these farms, they receive all the net metering credits from the utility for exporting all this power to the grid. With community solar, you can agree to purchase those net metering credits from the solar farm developer at a discounted rate from what you would otherwise pay directly to the utility company for the same amount of power. Meaning that by signing up for community solar, you can oftentimes get an immediate 5 to 15% discount on your utility costs right off the bat. If it sounds great, it's because it is. Obviously, you have to have farms available in your area, but it's a very low commitment option and alternative for people who are not able to install directly on their home. If rooftop solar is an option for you, that'll likely save you more money long term. But for people who are looking for a shorter term option, typically you need about a 6-month window to cancel, but otherwise it's a subscription feature that allows you to subscribe to bill credits, help support clean energy generation in your utility region, and discount your electric bills as a result. Again, key features here: utility company essentially pays for the net metering and energy they're getting from the solar farm. You're paying the solar provider for the credits they get from the utility company. We at EnergySage have a marketplace which allows you to compare different farm options around your area, see where the farms are located, read up on the developers, and start your application process directly through our platform. So this is again a great alternative for anyone whose home is not a great fit for rooftop solar at the moment. Key detail here as far as how the payment works for this. So there are 2 different types of billing payment for community solar, either consolidated billing or dual billing. Consolidated billing is the simpler one, where essentially the community solar developer fully covers your utility bill, and the only bill you pay each month is to your solar provider, is to the community solar farm. So they pay your utility bill, and then they charge you a discounted rate each month compared to what you would have otherwise paid directly to the utility. So again, I'm on a solar provider who has consolidated billing. I don't pay my utility provider anymore. I just pay this community solar provider at about a 10% discount from what I otherwise would have paid. With dual billing, you actually get two bills. You have your solar bill and you have your utility bill. You're paying the solar company based on the amount of credits your allocation at the farm is generating. And then your utility bill is discounted accordingly based on how many credits you have saved up. So there's a bit more seasonality there based on when you're generating versus when you're using, but long-term, the discount is going to be the same. Great, we can move right along here.
Is there a long-term commitment? You said just the 6-month cancellation window?
Yeah, so again, it's a one-way contract. It's cancelable at any time. The only difference being that you typically have to provide a window for when you're planning on canceling. So if you want to cancel, sometimes they'll require that you cancel 6 months in advance. So if, for example, if you're a renter and you know you're leaving your current home or apartment at the end of your leasing term, cancel within that window so they have enough time to be able to clear out the system allocation for you there. Otherwise, you might pay a couple extra months more than you need. If you are moving within the same utility territory, oftentimes you can actually just transfer your allocation to a different address within the same territory as well. So you don't always have to cancel even if you're leaving the same address. So that was obviously a lot of info about the nuts and bolts of rooftop and community solar. Let's talk a little bit about the role of EnergySage here. So I know I gave a more generic background kind of at the top of the meeting today. Again, to emphasize, we are here as a resource for anyone who's looking to go through the shopping process and needs the extra assistance. Unlike Green Energy Consumers Alliance, we are for-profit. We like to describe ourselves as a mission-driven for-profit in that we have partnerships with a lot of different nonprofits to be able to help provide the consumer protection angle that we think is, to be frank, needed in an industry like this that is very new for people and has some, let's say, not so trustworthy players as part of the process of proceeding. So we try to make it as easy as possible to do the research you need, get quotes from vetted contractors. I want to emphasize, though, we do ask for some contact information as part of your registration. We do not release your contact info. We don't sell your contact info. We don't provide your email address or phone number to the installers who quote you unless you specifically request that we do. You can do all of your search directly on our platform if you'd like, if you don't want to get any calls from installers until you're ready to do so. Everything is done through our platform. We have a great network of vetted solar contractors that we have done our due diligence on to make sure that we think they are reputable, that we know they're eligible to work in your area, and that we would trust working with long-term. So you could go through the research process with us. Takes about 15 minutes to register an account. Then you'll start getting quotes within a day, likely up to a couple days. You can do the full quote review directly on our platform, speak to the installers when you're ready, get some updated bids, maybe have someone out for a site survey. Throughout this full process, my team, the energy advisors, are there to help you every step of the way, whether that's comparing your quotes, comparing any external quotes you've gotten, reading up and understanding the technology, all the way to saying, let's make a final decision. Let's see who the right pick is for you here and actually get that ball rolling. Once you've selected the quote, we get you moving forward with them directly. They'll finalize the bid, they'll do all of the applications for you, and they'll get your system up and running. This full process, I would say you can expect to take about 3 to 4 months on average, depending on your area, to actually get your system up and operational. If anyone here has registered with EnergySage before, these pages might look familiar. If you haven't, here's a snapshot as to what those quotes actually look like once they come in. So again, we give you a number of different installers to compare on. You can look at their prices, the amount of time it'll take for the system to pay for itself. You can contact the installers through the quotes and essentially review every aspect of the bid right from your computer here, right in front of your keyboard. When you're ready to do so, there are plenty of contact options. There are ratings and reviews for each partner. If you click on their names on our site, we have profile pages for the hundreds of installers who work through our network. So you can really get a really good idea of exactly who you'd be working with and kind of get the full picture of them as a company and as an organization. Last thing, one more time, I'll plug the resource that we provide. Our goal is to be an unbiased resource for you. We are not looking to push you any one direction or another. We're here as a resource of information to help you identify what the info you need to know in order to go solar, help you sift through the differences. Really, if nothing else, just serve as a sanity check and a soundboard to make sure you're looking at things the right way. So whatever you would find helpful as part of that support for going through your search, us as a platform and as a team are there to provide it for you.
Yeah, and one of if you haven't actually registered for EnergySage, again, it's free and it's no obligation and it's private, so it doesn't hurt to do it. We're going to give you the link to do it in this presentation and afterwards, but being registered gives you that really easy access. You log in and you can just schedule a time to talk to an advisor. We certainly have Matt here as a resource right now, who can help you out, if you follow up with him, but it's going to be faster and easier also if you register. So if you haven't already done that, and you really think about solar, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I would always recommend if you want to look into this, register the account first, and then that's going to make the first conversation you have with myself or someone from our team a lot more fruitful once we have some more direct info to kind of reference to as we're going through the process. The quotes are not meant to be finalized right at the beginning. It's meant to be a work in progress. As we get more information, we help them get finalized and keep that process moving. But that's all ideally the starting point there. Do we have quick answer to a question here? Do we have locations in New York? We do, yeah. So we have, again, we're national. So chances are, if you're in a state where solar is viable, we have some contractors out your neck of the woods. Great, and starting point here, I believe if you have your phones handy, you can use the QR code here to actually get started and register through the Green Energy Consumers Alliance portal on our platform.
And it's also at greenenergyconsumers.org/solar. And one of the reasons that I'd really love for you to go through that link or this QR code is if you do ultimately decide to go solar and you do it through EnergySage, through an installer EnergySage recommends, we do get a kickback, and we put that money, $250 typically, and we put that money toward our mission. So if you want to do solar and you also want a nonprofit to get a kickback out of you doing solar, please go through that link. So here we are in the Q&A section. So Matt, I think you can see the Q&A too.
I can, yeah. I'm happy to just start running down the list here and see how many we can get through. Again, apologies if we don't have enough time to get through every question today. We will be providing resources for how we can continue the discussion. And if you'd find more of a one-on-one conversation helpful, we are there to assist. But yeah, ET, should I just start kicking it off here, run through some of the questions we got?
The first, well, one of the most upvoted here is key technical factors. I'm not sure looking at installing solar panels, what are the key technical factors, efficiency metric we should consider when an installer proposes a particular manufacturer or model?
Great question. So we actually have a panel rating system on our site that was not designed by us. It was designed by NREL, the National Renewable Energies Laboratory based out of Colorado. So it's a relatively simple rating system, essentially 1 to 5 stars, but panels have to hit a certain baseline level of quality in certain key areas in order to fall into a certain rating subcategory. The factors that we look at there are going to be the rated power of the panel, so the panel size in watts, the efficiency of the panel, the degradation of the panel is one of the more important details. So knowing how well your panel is essentially going to age over time is an important one. Then lastly, the warranty coverage from the manufacturer as well, I'd say, are a couple of the key initial details. There are finer details you can comb through when you're looking at a panel, seeing like what it's rated for in terms of snow, wind, hail, the temperature coefficient, so how well it does in heat. So there's a lot of details that you can consider, I'd say. But as far as core metrics to consider, again, efficiency, degradation rate are a pretty good starting point for knowing how well a panel is going to perform.
And then, as you know, lots of upvotes on renting versus buying.
Yeah, so I know there were a handful of people here who asked a pretty similar question, and this is a great one, because there's to kind of zoom out a bit, there's a few different ways you can pay for solar. Cash purchase is obviously going to be one of them. If you have the funds to be able to pay out of pocket, that's always an option. If you're not able to, financing is very common. So being able to take out a loan for solar, there are a lot of solar sponsored financing programs throughout the country, both public and private. Every installer who does solar installs is going to have financing partners they work with to give you loan options for solar. Leasing is the third option. It's not particularly popular at all through our platform, and I'd say is not as common now as it used to be. When you lease, essentially you do not own the system. You are essentially renting the system from an installer who is basically charging you a set monthly fee for the system that they're installing on your property. Typically, that monthly fee is going to be a bit less than what you might pay to finance, not terribly less, but the benefit to leasing being that it's probably the lowest out-of-pocket cost for solar. The downside being that you do not get to claim the federal tax credit. You do not get to claim any sort of purchase production incentives that you get for owning the system. And it can provide some tricky difficulties upon home resale. So for the majority of customers, I do not recommend leasing. I'd say as long as you're able to claim the tax incentive, it's probably going to be a better payoff for you in the long run to own, even if you have to finance. There are cases where leasing can make sense. And I think one question here was from someone describing their position as a nonprofit. This is a sensible alternative. So if you do not have any sort of tax liability, the tax liability is required for you to claim the tax credit. So I think there was another question asking that as an extension of the EV credit. You do have to pay income tax to be able to take advantage of that program. So if you don't pay any tax, tax credits, you don't plan on moving anytime soon, maybe you're retired, then leasing can be an alternative as the lowest upfront investment to go solar. Otherwise, I'd say long-term purchasing is probably the better bet.
Great. Well, I think those were the most upvoted. So we can, the next most upvoted is I have a side-by-side 2-family and I own both sides, but I don't know what to do with the inverter tie-in and who gets the benefit. And there were also a few other inverter questions scattered throughout. So we can start there.
Yeah, I know there was the string versus microinverter question. This is a good question. This is where this is essentially where virtual net metering would be relevant. As when you go solar, your system is tied to one distinct meter. You don't have a system that's split across multiple meters. So if you have a 2-family and you own both sides, but they both have independent electric meters, if you install solar, you either have to have 2 split systems, one for each meter, or one system for one meter, wherein you share net metering credits between the meters. Not every utility region allows you to share credits. In Massachusetts, it is pretty common. You would just submit what we call a Schedule Z to essentially connect the meters for the purpose of your solar production. Then you'll export a lot of energy back to the grid and essentially apply credits to both meters. So again, if you're in Massachusetts, likely it's possible for you to do that. I honestly don't know off the top of my head for Rhode Island whether that is still an option, but for a lot of the rest of the country, that's not feasible at this point. So again, if you have a 2-family, if you're in Massachusetts, you can probably get away with one system. Just make sure your installer understands that setup so they can size the system properly. Otherwise, you're looking at independent systems for each meter.
Wow. What about a couple of these other inverter questions?
Yeah.
Disadvantages of microinverters versus single inverter, and then the first question, replacing.
So micro versus string. So again, the inverter being the piece in the system that translates the energy to what's usable by your home, DC to AC. There are a couple different ways to do that. The more traditional type is with a string inverter where you have one central inverter that each panel in the system funnels into. The other type being microinverters where you have one small inverter per panel and the energy is inverted at the panel level. They are both proven types of technology. Everyone you speak to is going to have a preference in terms of which one they like to use. From a performance perspective, they can both get the job done. So I'd say if you don't feel like you have a preference, they're both feasible. You'll be able to monitor your system with both. Microinverters, I'd say, are typically a bit more expensive, but are also generally better if you want a system that's a bit more future-proof. Otherwise, they're as long as you're working with a good brand, they're both usable.
And what about an inverter that's off warranty for someone with a system currently?
Yeah. So if I'm interpreting the question right, I think the question is whether or not you're expanding the system and replacing the inverter to get something under warranty. If you're looking to expand the system either way, replacing the inverter and just redoing that portion of the system is probably the best bet. Otherwise, even if the inverter is no longer under warranty, if it's still working, that's not the end of the world. It just might mean that if your inverter does fail, maybe in a couple of years, you might be offline for a bit until you can get a replacement done.
What about putting panels on a pole and not a roof, or on a vertical wall.
Yeah, my understanding of this question was that it was asking about tracking systems where you have panels on poles that track to essentially follow the sun. That's not really going to be restricted so much on watts per se, but rather just panel compatibility with the racking system. Honestly, I won't pretend to be an expert specifically on tracking systems. They're very uncommon. But that, again, the question there is less about watts and more just compatibility. But any company you work with that's doing that type of install is going to have equipment in their inventory that'll be compatible there. I want to jump down to one specific question here while we have some time because it's an important one. The how does EnergySage make our money? So this is another very common question that we get. Like I said, we are for profit, so it's absolutely fair to understand kind of where is our skin in the game. Like I obviously, like we said, we are unbiased. So to give you a little bit of background on EnergySage, we were founded in the early 2010s again as an educational resource for solar, as well as the marketplace model that we still have today. We got a lot of upstart funding through various grants from the Department of Energy as that consumer protection resource, as well as resources like the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. As we built out the marketplace, our model is structured so that installers do pay a fee to use the platform. So installers within our service do pay a fee to use the site. Among installers on the platform is where we play no favorites. So installers who work with us, they essentially they do kind of pay to play, for lack of a better term. So it's in their best interest to kind of keep us happy and work well with the customers using our resource. And we ideally try to help as many people go solar as possible to help the installers we work with succeed. So again, we are unbiased among individual installers, but installers do kind of pay to use the resource, which is where at least part of our funding comes from.
Couple questions about what happens at the end of the life of the system.
Yeah. So panel recycling does exist. I will say it's still relatively in its infancy in terms of sort of how well developed a lot of panel recycling programs are. This, I'd say, is a downside of the industry right now. It creates a lot of technical waste. Equipment has become a lot more recyclable over time. If panels especially I would say for a lot of systems that are installed today, if we're looking 25 years from now, given that we already have some recycling options, especially in areas where solar is pretty popular, I do think that's going to look a little different. Otherwise, though, a lot of equipment does end up in landfills. And panels can be recycled, they can be reused, but overall, not everything is going to be able to make it to a new home. In terms of the process, if you are having your system removed, typically you'll have a contractor come out to remove the system, and then either reinstall it if you're redoing your roof, or just pay someone to take it away, whether that's the recycling resource or, again, just unfortunately taking the equipment to a waste center.
Hopefully in our greener future, that situation will get figured out. We'll be recycling more panels in the future, but at this time, that seems like the answer.
Yep.
So we're at about 8:29. I want to be conscious of people's time. But so Matt, I wonder if you want to take a scan and pick one more to answer, or two, if you can fit them in quick.
Yep. Let me see if I can find a good one here. I think we've covered a good amount of the options here. So if I purchase a battery with my PV systems, can I isolate from the grid during a power outage? Yes, you can. A lot of solar batteries will allow you to not only draw from the battery during an outage, but recharge the battery during the day. Otherwise, without a battery, your system will fully disconnect. But you can essentially kind of fool the system, for lack of a better term, into kind of thinking the battery is the grid. So your system operates within the confines of the battery's export and import power. You're able to refill the battery and then use the battery over time. So your system is not going to be operating at full capacity, but as far as a microgrid is concerned, at a small level, you can. Yep. We covered leasing versus buying.
Net metering work. How does net metering work in a multifamily?
Yeah, so we
can
cover that with multi-meters, virtual net metering. If it's on the same property, you can share credits in a lot of Massachusetts, at least, but not everywhere. Domestic versus international manufactured panels. The area where the equipment is manufactured is not necessarily the most important factor to consider. Some people prefer North American manufactured equipment. There are plenty of brands that are manufactured in North America, so if you want to request that, you can. But I would say it's not necessarily a requirement by any means. There's no shortage of panel manufacturers out there. A lot of manufacturers as well are starting to set up some local stateside manufacturing facilities as well. So some of them will manufacture internationally as well as right here in the States.
Well, Matt, unless you see unless anything else is really jumping at you.
No, I'd say this is a good starting point. Again, I know a couple of these are a little bit more more specifically directed towards individual cases. I guess last one, the $5,000 Rhode Island grant. Honestly, I'm not sure if you can apply for it after the fact. Apologies if your installer didn't let you know about that up front. I would recommend going back to them if possible and seeing if they know anything about the application process there. But otherwise, I'm not sure it would still be available. Though certainly possible if you want to try to contact the permitting office directly to reach out about that, you can. Last one, will energy advise municipalities? I'm assuming this is related to Massachusetts municipalities. Absolutely, we do. Especially if your municipality still offers net metering. A lot of them do. Not everyone does, but a lot of them do. You can feel free to come register with us, and we should still have installers available to work with you.
Thanks, Matt. So we have some great questions. And like I said, if we didn't get to them, we are going to try to connect with you after the fact. Going to follow up with some resources. And just to close out, if you liked this webinar, we're repeating it. So tell your friends on July 13th. We've also got Electric Vehicles 101. We're doing it in Chinese and English on the 18th and the 19th. And we're going to talk in depth about rebates and incentives in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and through the Inflation Reduction Act for electric cars on July 26th. They're all free. You can register for any of them at greenenergyconsumers.org/event. And we also post all of our webinars, including this one, on our YouTube channel, and I will email you about that. Again, if you like what we do here, trying to connect people with great resources like EnergySage, and also programs to help them install solar heat pumps, advocacy for a low carbon future, please donate. Even $10 makes a difference, and we're trying to raise $4,000 more by Friday. We are a nonprofit, and your donations do fuel our work. Thank you. So there's our contact information. You will hear from me directly, following up within 24 hours. And again, thanks for all your beautiful questions. Again, that link is greenenergyconsumers.org/solar. If you want to go register for EnergySage, again, there's absolutely no obligation once you do. So couldn't recommend it more. And I want to say thanks again to Matt.
Yep, I really appreciate getting the chance to speak with everyone today. Really appreciate everyone taking your time out of this Tuesday night to come learn a little bit more. My email is here. If you have follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out. And absolutely take the time to register. Obviously I'm biased, but I think we have a great resource for anyone who's even remotely interested in at least getting an idea of what solar and the energy transition really looks like for you. And we are happy to help every step of the way. Completely free to use on the customer side. So as ET said, no obligation at all. Feel free to come and learn more with us.
Yep. And we, as a consumer protection and consumer interest organization, endorse and recommend EnergySage. So feel free to tell us how you feel, or if you're having a good experience, or you or otherwise, let us know. And thank you for coming. Have a wonderful
Have a great night, everyone.